Similarly, Richard Branson is one of the greatest bootstrappers of all time, and the way that he came from, he started off with a newspaper business. I mentioned that was back in high school. He quit high school because he was dyslexic, and this was the kick that he got to the push that he got. He was dyslexic and was failing all of his classes because no teachers, they didn't know that was the case. And so he had started up this little newspaper and said, hey, I think I'm going to go do this full time, and I think I can make a go of that. So he jumps on and does that and he moves out to the city and works on his newspaper. Well, the newspaper isn't making any money. It's, kind of just always persistently in the valley of death. So they said, well, heck, we know students. This is a student newspaper. Why don't we sell them some music? Let's do a mail order music business. That was one of the ideas they threw out. They tried it. Guess what? Worked. Kids love music. They put ads in the newspaper. They'd buy the music. Awesome. Well, then they had a postal workers strike. Eek, our music business is about to die. Richard says, well, wait a second. Why don't we open up a store? So from that led Virgin Stores. And then from the store experience, they learned about retail and the fact that margins are low in retail, which then prompted them up to open up a record company. So here, this other notion, which is correlated with constraint creates innovation, is this notion that the bootstrapper is constantly adapting and taking everything that's coming in at them, both from their quote-unquote competition, as well as from the world at large, and their customers, and they're going and playing and dancing with it. And that's where this death of the ego, in terms of the bootstrapper himself, is really, really important. You can't be too caught up in, I'm going to be delivering this thing to the world. You're going to have to listen and get better and better at listening to what's around and what's really showing up and what your customers really want from you, and what you need to go do. So constraint creates innovation, and therefore it kind of has a relationship about what you do with capital, and the fact that you don't go for that seemingly easy answer that says that you can go get capital from an investor and you get them to pay you and then keep going. No, get that money from that customer, and that pursuit, it keeps you completely aligned with your eye on the customer about what it is that they need. The other piece of the myth that's here is that meaning precedes action. What people think is that I can conceive my business model up front and then execute it. In fact, it's the other way around. From the actions that go on in the valley of death, the business model itself is going to emerge, and that's what you actually then go scale in the growth stage. And so you've got to take a bunch of actions in the world with customers and try these things and see what happens. And then slowly but surely, the meaning is going to get extracted out of it. It doesn't happen that meaning precedes action. It happens that action precedes meaning. And that's what the beauty of this valley of death process is all about. And so this whole idea that you can analyze and sort of ahead of time and think about what's going to happen is actually not the key piece. This is also why, when we go back to the bootstrapper line, it's the evangelist that's now leading the dance. This is what evangelists do. They go out and they go find customers, they go talk to those customers, and they go in and react spontaneously to whatever situations are there, and then they try to make the best of it, try to find out what they can do. It's not that the Maven isn't playing in that game, because the Maven's essential, because the product is really the guardian of the Maven, and the Maven's going to come up with all these great solutions to problems that the evangelist goes out and finds in the context of talking to customers. So it's the evangelist that's taking the lead of the dance in the valley of death, but the Maven is still integral to the process, and the evangelist is in a way acting as a broker between the customer and the Maven. Going to the customer and saying, hey, what do you need this? Taking our demo, do you need this? What do you think? Customer goes, well, not really, but actually that looks interesting. Tell me more about that. The evangelist might say, well, I've got this wonderful cup, and do you want this cup? And the customer goes, well, not really. I've got lots of cups at home. But what's interesting is, I drive to work, and I'd like to have a cup of coffee on my way to work, and I'm usually in too much of a rush to finish it while I'm at home. Maybe can your cup transport liquids, my coffee while I'm going to work? And well, let me get back to you. So they go back to the evangelist goes back to the Maven, and the Maven says, well, yeah, that's easy. We put a lid on that thing. And in fact, by the way, this is another design I came up with long ago. I've got this really cool material that actually insulates the liquid. And not only can they have coffee in the morning, but they can have cold liquids at night, and they can use the same cup. Evangelist says, great, let's take that back. Let's take that back. So now what's happening to the product? The product is moving out of the demo stage and becoming more evolved. Maybe demo 1.0 or version 1.0. And now they can take that demo back to the customer and say, hey, so now we've got this cool lid and it insulates your thing. What about now? The whole key thing is in that circle, in that duality of conversation between the Maven and the customer, with the evangelist as the broker for that conversation, the product is getting modified, the customer is telling you what problem you're solving, and then the product is getting modified, and so on and so forth. You're going round and round and round until this magical thing happens, which is called a transaction. And at that point, it all comes together. And again, that's the core duality. That's the core set of opposites that are coming together in the valley of death. And they come together in something called a sale. That's why it's all about selling. When the customer takes out the scarce cash that they've got and says, yep, here you go. Here's your $50 for this, or 100,000, or whatever it might be. Give me what you've got. They're telling you that you've actually hit something that they care about. And now you know, and you're beginning to learn about what that is. So that's what's essentially going on, and that really speaks to the third line of what's happening. Not the bootstrapper, not the product, but now the customer. And so the valley of death is the birth of that customer, and the way that that customer gets birthed is through this dialogue that's happening, the round and round between the organization and the customer, using the demo essentially as a talking point to begin that conversation. And the demo you might not even end up selling plastic cups. You might end up selling a service because they've got 50 plastic cups that need to be serviced. Well, that's what you discover from the conversation that you're having with the customer. Now, one of the other things, let's actually talk about the organizational line. We're still not really thinking too much about the organization. There's some things probably coming together. We might have some more people in the thing, but we're kind of making do. We're cobbling together technologies back end. We're not really focused on the organization. But one thing that you see a lot is that people want to show momentum of their business. They want to show how things are growing and press releases and so on and so forth. The bootstrapper is very, very quiet. In the valley of death, you want no one to know what you're doing, except for your customers. So don't worry about broadcasting what you're doing to the world. All that'll do is alert potential competitors to come and just squash you. Not even like that. They'll just do that and squash you because you're not even bacteria. So what you do, what the bootstrapper does in this stage is be very, very quiet. And quietly, in obscurity almost, goes and learns and discovers what it is they're doing and what their business really is. I think it's no accident that Dell is in Austin, which when it was growing up was really not at the center of high tech, and Microsoft was up in Redmond in Seattle, not at the epicenter of Silicon Valley. These are not accidents because they can quietly go off and figure out what they're doing and work with those customers. Now, we've kind of understood the valley of death and the fact that we've got to go sell. And really one of the things that you can do to think about this in terms of a mindset is that think of things like jazz. Don't think of classical music, the structure of classical music, and you have to play all those notes exactly like the way Mozart wrote them out, versus jazz, which has a lot of play and flexibility, and all the players are responding to each other, looking at each other, and taking it forward, taking that piece of music forward dynamically. In the same way, instead of doing a play where we know all the lines and what's happening ins and outs, we're doing improv. We're coming up there and we're reacting to the audience. In the case of improv, is the proxy for the customer, and as the audience does things and shouts things out to the players on the stage, they're going with it and reacting to it and going forward with it. So things like improv, things like jazz, things like the martial art aikido, these are all ways to get that mental model set in your own mind about the flexibility and that adaptability that you need for this valley of death stage.